not sure if too many people know about the gentleman who is on this screen, Alexander Parkhurst. Anyone know this gentleman? He was the some old man of the 19th century. He created plastic. He was a Londoner, not working so far from here. He created a plastic that called Parkesine in Hackney Wick in East London. And he was using this material initially to make coins. It was the most durable material, coins and plastic wigs. So it was quite interesting. It was not a commercial success. The company had to close down after a few years of operation. And then a few decades later, other materials like bakelite from Mr. Bakelite started to pop back out. And now we see that like plastic had been a really good material. We use it for many different things, right? We use it for phone cases because it's really durable, but we use it a lot for single-use items. Absolutely. And it's one of the fantastic materials. It's really cheap, it's really light, it's wonderful, but some of the superpowers, like for example, it's really long-lasting, is their main weaknesses. That's why, as well, it ends up in many different ways. In landfill, in the oceans. You can recycle plastic, but only 10% of the plastics nowadays get recycled. So it's a big problem. I started my career as an architect, so nothing to do initially with plastics, but I started to recycle plastics and to try to make plastic into buildings. I fell into this, so after spending 5 years trying to go around Europe and trying to collect plastic bottles, and I came back to London and started to think how you could rethink how you could make this. And come up with this, we call it O, because it's the name that people give it when they see it for the first time. They make that sound of surprise. Basically, they make, and it's a membrane made out of seaweed that can capture water or any other liquids, and it's edible, so cheers.
Ooh,
ooh, nice. It's made from seaweed. I don't know how much you know about seaweed. This material can grow up to 2 meters a day. So it's the fastest organism on Earth. Doesn't need water, doesn't need fertilizer. Well, it needs water, seawater, but not fresh water. Doesn't need too much human intervention. And we do believe it's one of the materials of the past. It's the first organism on Earth. It's the first organism that creates. We can argue that we are all made out of seaweed. But it can be one of the materials of the future. It's quite a lot of seaweed. And the most amazing properties of seaweed, it comes in different forms. There's 72,000 different species of seaweed. There's more difference between a red seaweed and a brown seaweed in terms of DNA than my DNA and a mushroom. So it's quite a lot of difference. Could be the cheapest material on Earth. For example, this is the Caribbean. It comes as seaweed blooms. You get a contract of up to £5 million to collect all the seaweed. Or it could be the most sophisticated material as well. It's used as in a form of agarose, for example, to grow DNA. So you have a lot of different uses of seaweed. Had been used to make glass. In UK was really popular for that, especially in Scotland. Had been used to make gunpowder. Was the secret weapon of the Allies during the First and Second World War, because the main production of gunpowder, it was in Germany. So all the coast of California started a really big production of seaweed to make gunpowder. But no one had been using too much for packaging. And the advantage of using seaweed for packaging is that you don't need to chemically modify it to create a material that can work as packaging. Don't know if you can see it here, but this is one of our materials. You can eat it, but if you don't eat it, nature will eat it really quickly. Faster than an orange peel. Cardboard will last around a month. And what is called nowadays compostable plastics, like PLA, they normally need specific conditions to disappear, like heat and pressure. Maybe I can show you how we make this in a little experiment. Maybe, James, you can give me a hand.
I certainly can.
So this is the part of the seaweed that we use, is the hydrocolloid. It's like the gummy part of the seaweed when you touch seaweed on the sea. And basically, we put it like that.
It's like a sticky mess.
Yeah. We can spread it out. This is just an applicator.
It's now a sticky mess spread out.
Yeah. And then what we do is we put salt water. That's what happens on the sea.
It's now a sticky mess with salt water on it.
And
oh my God.
You can see here.
It's now packaging.
I don't know if packaging yet, but like at least it's a membrane, it's a material.
Yeah.
That is quite resistant. I don't know if you can touch it.
That is really amazing. It's like
Yeah.
those school science experiments that were the good ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've broken.
And you can eat it if you want, but it's
No.
quite salty. I don't recommend this one.
I'll let you do that one, Rodrigo.
Good. We licensed the first recipe under Creative Commons. So we were in Imperial College, not with the idea of making a company or anything like that. And we received quite a lot of kind of like videos of how to replicate this. That was quite an interesting start. We put a team of chemists to replicate this. And then the next step, it was like, okay, we know how to make it, but how to make it industrially. I think probably we will talk about this later.
Yes.
And this was the mission. Like, no one can make plastic, right, in a small scale like a cafe, but everyone could make plastic seaweed packaging. So we thought, okay, let's start trying to make a machine. We raised some crowdfunding money to make this machine, and we made the machine. And after a few years of iterations of making machines, we have discovered that we are not the best making machines. So we have quit that business. So we have licensed now that technology of that machines to a German company who are really good at making machines. They used to be in the sausage industry. So they used to make sausage machines. And now we are able to produce this product at quite high speeds and quite high scales. So they are making these machines for us, and we supply the seaweed materials for them.
Phenomenal.
And once we had been able to industrialize this, we had been able to use it on different contexts. So we had been using it for things like the London Marathon, where runners could eat the packaging. And you could see here the big impact that this have in terms of like, instead of the bottles on the edge, there is literally no waste in the station. Now we're working with Decathlon on long shelf life for things like energy gel, where when you are in a bike, for example, or in a race, you don't want to throw the little sachet. We have done little oranges. We had a bar at some point. Cocktails works quite well. Vending machines. So you can do almost everything. You can shape it on different ways. So this is, for example, for olive oil. You can shape it. You can make it more resistant because you're not going to eat the olive oil. So I can throw it to you. You see, it won't break. But yeah, we always design packaging as you were designing fruits. So we always ask the question, for example, if toothpaste was a fruit, it will be a little blueberry instead of like a paste.
Cute.
So that's a bit where we came from. In this journey, we came across quite a lot of different things. One of the big things was COVID, where we were quite big in marathons. And COVID, as you can imagine, stopped all the marathons. So for 2 years, we were not able to do any edible packaging on events. But it came a different opportunity. We were working a lot with a company called JustEatTakeaway.com, doing the sauces, but they say, oh, we have a bigger problem than the sauces to throw yours away. That is the coating inside of cardboard packaging. Not so many people are familiar with this, but there is plastic. You don't see it, but like it's there. Can you do the same experiment in big scale? And that's a bit what we had been doing for a while. So we take seaweed. This is seaweed from France. We wash it, and we make the same solution that you have seen here, but in big tanks, in big scale. And then we learn our lesson of not have to make machine. So we partner with, this is a Royal Mail factory where they used to put the stamps. And as you can imagine, the stamp business is not going up, so it's going down. So they're quite happy with us. We make a waterfall of seaweed, and we pass paper. And then with the paper, we can convert it into different type of forms of packaging. And with that packaging, we have done quite a lot of different things. So I think you are going to have it today, but we have been doing quite a lot of, like the final of the Champions League last week, it was with Notpla. We are in quite a lot of different places in relatively large numbers. But at the moment, for example, 50 stadiums in the UK use our packaging, which is quite big scale. Things like Wimbledon use our packaging. The canteen, I think, of Google use our packaging. Canteen of Apple use our packaging. IKEA as well, in the new IKEA in Norfolk Circus. If you go there and you use meatballs, they use our packaging. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how this is starting to go big. So now we are in 10 countries, doing tens of millions of units. Doesn't convert into tens of millions of pounds because packaging is really cheap, but we are getting there. Few things that we are working on that they are not yet in the market, but as we are in this context, I thought it was nice to share really quickly.
Oh, wow.
But we are working on flexible films to use in traditional packaging machinery for things that can add some value. So things like on food, or in this case, for example, is coffee, but the memory have sugar, so you add value. If you want the coffee with sugar, you solubilize it. If you want without sugar, you take it out. Get into the wall of detergents as well, that at the moment they use a plastic that is soluble, that is called PBOH. On edible side, we are trying to make the films as well for our own products, but this is in 50 supermarkets in the Netherlands, where you take a salad roll with our films that you can eat, which is quite crazy, in supermarkets called Albert Heijn's. And now with the seaweed, we use 20% of the extract, that is this, but we started to use as well the other part, that is the fiber, for 2 other products. One is paper, so we started to make paper out of seaweed, with the advantage that it has less carbon, but as well it uses less trees, because a tree takes at least 40 years to grow, while seaweed it takes 40 days.
Yeah.
And the last thing that we have been trying to do is pellets. So we are trying to pelletize the material to make rigid or semi-rigid material. So now, for example, we're doing quite a lot of ice cream spoons or other type of products. I think that's it. I'm not myself. We are a team at the moment of 50 people working in East London. We won this big prize called the Airshot Prize. That's the biggest award in sustainability that comes from the hands of Prince William, and he had been a really good advocate. It comes with £1 million. That is not nothing either. But he had been pushing quite hard as well our initiative by selling our packaging to Aston Villa, or pushing quite a lot of these things. And I think that gives you a bit of overview of
Amazing.
What we're doing in Notpla.
Fantastic. And now the audience can see why I was so keen to talk to you. So take a seat. I have spent the last 25 years in packaging. So I work for Cambridge Design Partnership, and I'm sure a lot of the scientists and the technologists would love to be on the hot seat today talking to you, because of course the science, the technology is incredible. But looking at this from a packaging lens and bringing some of that kind of boring, pragmatic, how do we get this to market, how do we commercialize? I guess for a lot of people, especially when we're talking about the product. Am I doing that right?
Yeah, correct.
The product. It's got to be packaged. So you're giving the consumer something that is without packaging, which is awesome, but the logistics of getting it there. How do you talk to people about the argument around the fact that actually, as much as it's packaging free, it has to somehow be packaged to get to where it needs to get to?
Yeah, I suppose you can find analogies for that. Like, for example, ice cream is a good one, right? Like you have like ice cream cones. You cannot, ice cream cone is really effective on-the-go consumption, but it's not effective in retail, right? So it's certain occasions where the consumption kind of like allows for edible packaging. In other scenarios, for example, in retail, where you need a shelf life of 3 years or 2 years, it won't work. So it's kind of like trying to choose a bit your battles. For us, the fact that it's edible is almost the proof that it's not plastic. So it's not that you need to eat it all the time, but it's just our main differentiator factor, that is a natural polymer that is not chemically modified, and if it won't harm you, it won't harm the planet. Yeah,
I think what's really amazing about being with you today, thinking about sort of maybe 10 years ago, when maybe it wasn't quite 10 years ago, but those first shots of the product and people in the London Marathon using them, and the sponsorship from Lucozade, it felt like, and I'm going to be really honest with you, it kind of felt like this is too good to be true. It's a gimmick. It was a great gimmick, but nonetheless, people were kind of labeling it gimmick. And I think what's very exciting about what you've shown us today is that it's gone from something that was novel to something that is now being commercialized as scalable. How scalable is it?
Yeah.
If you got an order from some of the big players, many of whom are in this room, for it in its millions, in its billions, what would it take to get to that kind of scale? Could you do it?
Yeah. So it depends which product you are talking. I think at the moment, Ojo, we use it a bit as a concept car, right? Like it's the proof point that like, and it's most of the inquiries that we have is like inbound, so people kind of like ask us, oh, how we can do that. We have much more boring products. For example, the boxes. No one talks about the boxes, if that makes sense, because it just looks like a box, but it's really, really, really scalable. Coming back to your question of how, at what scale it is, so the last machine that you saw,
yes,
it can make per minute the same amount of ojos that we did when we did the London Marathon in a month.
Wow.
So it's really fast. You can speed it up to the point that instead of seeing the product going out of the machine, it makes this visual effect that it looks like the product is coming in. So it's quite fast. The challenge, there's a lot of challenges that to overcome is like how you make the product stable, how you make the big demand for this novel product. It's a bit like red ocean against blue ocean strategy.
Yes.
This is completely blue ocean when, for example, when we do coatings, it's completely the red ocean where the race is to the bottom of the price. In this case, for example, the margins that we can play with are quite healthy.
So a lot of the people involved in commercialization of innovation, especially people that are working in that kind of corporate environment, are going to be very cognizant of the fact that this is a new material. It's seaweed, right? So it's kind of magic. It felt like magic when you were doing that experiment for me. But for them to be able to buy into the idea that in future we might move away from those traditional polymers to things like this, and it can be done. It's a potential reality. You're sowing seeds, you're casting vision. But how do you bring the corporate world to a place where it recognizes there are alternatives to plastic in the way that you're trying to pioneer them?
Yeah. So a couple of points there. I think first, we're ambitious, but we know that we are not going to replace all the plastic. There's kind of like quite a lot of good uses of plastic, and I think that's something to recognize. If you want to keep a product for 10 years intact, plastic is your material. If you want to do something on the go with small volumes and really hard to recycle, probably that's a place where we have a say. Seaweed is one of the materials, but it probably is not the only material as well that is out there. We created this group called the Natural Polymer Group that tried to kind of like unify all the natural polymer companies that they are working a bit on this space of not modifying the material. You can start with seaweed, or you can start as well with corn or potato and modify it and make a plastic. That's not the point I wanted to make. It's that we are playing with natural materials. Natural materials have their limitations as well. So in terms of performance, in terms of barriers, you have like some of the weaknesses, if that makes sense, that we have.
It does.
We need to try to convert it into strengths. So for example, our material doesn't last long. That's why it's unique. How we can make that uniqueness our strength, or how we can make it disappear when it lasts, when we want it.
So the innovation journey you've been on, it is incredible. Those videos kind of just really bring it home into kind of what a feat it's been. What surprised you? We've got a bunch of people in the audience who are all, in some way or another, working in the world of innovation, bringing new things into the world. And we know it's bloody hard. You've done it. What are some of the things that have surprised you on your journey? The things that actually were much more difficult than you thought they would be, and maybe the things that have been a lot easier than you thought they would be?
Good question. I suppose for me on my day-to-day, the most hard thing is to deal with internal team and people and issues. I think probably everyone in the room shares a bit the same thing of like how to keep the team motivated and the spirit high when what you are trying to do is quite high risk, if that makes sense, and it's not easy. No one have done it before. Every time that we do a Gantt chart and we plan something, even 2 days after, that Gantt chart had changed completely. So it's really hard to predict the future. Coming back to a bit the first talk, even the future for us, things change quite quickly. Yeah. I think what surprised us, the biggest scale, if that makes sense, of the problem that we are trying to solve. Speaking of Finland as well, before I was in Finland a few weeks ago, seeing some of the big paper mills where it's incredible. They have like a train truck coming every day full of trees and a line of trucks completely kind of like full all the time to feed that big industry. And the scale of it is massive. Like they do these big reels of paper that probably are the size of this room. So it's quite huge. Every day that they run 24 hours, obviously, but every day they run, I think it's like around 5 million pounds of operations. So if you want to stop that operations to say, hey, we are going to put seaweed here, it's
I can
expensive.
imagine some people would have some concerns.
Yeah, some concerns, but having said that, we have been kind of like going league by league. So when we started, we were able to code, for example, on paper at 5 meters per minute. That for us, it was a good thing. Then we went to 30 meters per minute. Then we convinced the next one. It's a bit like football, like going through different leagues.
Yeah.
Now 200 meters per minute. We're in 300 meters per minute at the moment in this factory that I share in Manchester. That is quite good for, it's the same speed that they run other polymers. And now the big game is how to jump to these big scales of paper mills that they run at 2,000 meters per minute. But they produce the paper that everyone in Europe, and not only in Europe, use. So it's a bit how they find that balance.
And moving into that space is super exciting because, of course, we know that the paper industry, in terms of demand, is absolutely booming for packaging. We thought the future was AI, but actually we found out today it's seaweed. So there you go. Rodrigo, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.